G'day guys, I'm coming to you from the roadside. I am 200 kilometres north of Carnarvon on the way back to Perth. Just pulled over for a leg stretch to hang out with these flies. Well, not really. I've pulled over to answer some questions about what I've done about the roof since last time. So as you may recall, I had an issue with my roof rack. Well, I found out that there was an issue with it. I used to have a Frontrunner Rack which was rated for on-road and different off-road. When I'm on-road, I have this much carrying capacity. When I'm off-road, I have this much, which is bugger all. Now, someone in my position should have known about this. I didn't. And a lot of other people didn't know about this either. I think 80 to 90% of people who watched that video were shocked about the on-road and off-road rating. So, in case you've been living under a rock, that's why I am doing this follow-up video. My biggest issue was when I found out I had 1 week before I was heading north to the Shire of Ashburton, up here in the Pilbara, for a trip that I've been planning for quite some time. Full camera crew, Torben, we had all put aside time for this trip. We could not move it. COVID came in, kind of stuffed us up a bit, and then there was a cyclone. Then there was the bloody roof rack. So I sorted it with 1 day to spare. Well, we actually delayed us by 1 day. Since then, I've put on a Frontrunner roof rack. Has that sorted out my issue? Yes, it has. It's sorted out 2 issues. The first issue was the pop rivets. This roof rack is not pop riveted. So before I had the Frontrunner rack, it had 6 pop rivets on either side, maybe 7 actually. So I had like 12 to 14 holes in my roof with pop rivets. The other thing this roof rack has sorted out is my load rating. And the load rating is going to be an interesting topic because there's more to it. But this particular roof rack doesn't have an on-road and an off-road rating. It just has a rating of 75 kilos, including the rack onto the roof. And they simply state, do not exceed vehicle roof load rating when loaded. Drive in accordance with off-road conditions. They don't derate the roof when you go off-road. If I take this vehicle and I've got 75 kilos on it and I go off-road, I'm still fine. The rack weighs 25 kilos, so it's 2 kilos lighter than the previous rack I had on it. So that means 25 kilos, easy equation, 50 kilos left of cargo. Adding all of this up, I could manipulate the numbers and say I'm right on the limit, but I'm going to be honest here, I am just over because of the wiring, and I have added a little bit of weight for not being sure on all the brackets and that. So I've definitely allowed for all the extras. We're looking at 52 kilos. So I'm actually 2 kilos over my threshold. So what I might have to do is swap 2 of these metal starter tracks, max tracks, over to the normal starter tracks, and then I will be right on the money. But at the moment, I am 2 kilos over. That's where I'm at. Before, I would have been 30 kilos over off-road with the other rack. 20 kilos, something like that. I would have been well over anyway, the off-road rating. Thankfully, this rack doesn't have an off-road rating, it just has a standard rating. There's a few things I'm still tinkering with, but at this stage, I'm 2 kilos over. So another thing with this rack that's different than the Ronny rack is the fact that the slats are running across that way, not that way. Now, to me, I would have preferred the slats running the opposite way because that's what I'm used to. That said, however, I have adapted to how this works, and because I'm limited to what I can put on here, it doesn't really make a difference anyway, because all I'm mounting in the middle are 2 max tracks, or 2 lots of 2. You'll also note that on this rack, I have evenly distributed everything. And that is another recommendation for all racks, is to evenly distribute all your weight. So the previous rack I had, if I had a swag, it'll have to be dead center in the middle. If you had an awning, it'll have to be evenly spread out. How are you going to evenly spread out an awning on your bloody roof rack if that's all you can have on it? So you know those big awnings? Well, if you put a 32 kilo awning On a Hilux Frontrunner Rack platform, you can't have it because it's not evenly distributed. That's another fine print in there. Someone did ask me last time why I had 2 pairs of 3 max tracks, which are now reduced to 2 pairs of 2. Actually, I still got that question from someone else as well. A few people have asked that. Now, I did address this in one of the videos, but the actual real reason for it is they're easier to get to. I've only got 2 pins on either side, so they're very easy to get off and put back on. The second reason, evenly distributed on the roof rack, so it kind of evens it out. The third reason, it looks good. Now to why I've removed 2 of the tracks. On the roof here, we still got 4 max tracks now. I used to have 6. To reduce the load on top of the roof, I decided to take 2 off and put on the actual trailer instead, as you can see on the trailer there. Another reason why I was happy to move 2 of them off the roof as well was the wind noise. Because they sat up that much higher, the wind noise was pretty bad from the max tracks. As soon as I moved those 2 max tracks, the wind noise changed quite a bit actually. So anyone who's got a roof rack that have got 4 stacked high, consider stacking them like I have. You're going to reduce the wind drag, the wind noise, and you're also going to evenly distribute your roof load as well. Oh, one other thing. How do I mount the max tracks? Well, this time I used the brackets from the previous one, just drilled a few extra holes. So there's just a flat bracket with 2 holes, and that sits in the track. And then I've drilled a hole straight through the bracket for the max tracks pin. That's all I've done. Very simple flat bar fix. A flat bar with 3 holes. That's it. How difficult was the Frontrunner to install, given that we had to pull the roof lining out? Well, it wasn't too difficult, and I did have help. So I had Alex and Rihanna from a 10 Soft Road. They came here, helped me out for about half a day. That's about how long it took us to get the roof rack on. And then the rest of the day I spent putting all the accessories and fitting all those to it. So it wasn't too bad. It was a bit daunting pulling all the roof lining down, but having Alex and Rihanna, their experienced accessory fitters, the ex-accessory fitters, they came in handy. There were no clips or anything broken because they knew what they were doing. Had I been doing it, I probably would have broken a lot of clips there and had to replace those and maybe put a few creases in the roof lining, but it's all good. It's all in there. We had to patch up all the holes left over from the pop rivets. Speaking of pop rivets, as you can see them right now, the surface area of what they're holding is really piss poor. Do not use pop rivets on roofs, which I've learnt the hard way. And after I pulled the old Frontrunner Rack rails out, which were pop riveted in, I did drill them through, but some were still catching on. They pulled quite easily straight out of the roof. And that then showed me and made me realise how dumb my arguments were earlier on when I was like, nah, pop rivets are all right. You know, use them on spaceships and submarines and ships. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty dumb about that right now. Anyway, it's all out. This rack is bolted down, 8 bolts in total, M8s. From the top to the bottom. Brackets with bolts through the roof. With a twin plate washer that sits underneath and catches the 2 bolts. And that's how this roof rack is fitted down. It's going nowhere. It is not coming off. So that's the process of putting that roof rack on. It took us half a day. I actually found fitting stuff to it much easier as well. You don't have to get those plates to put in the tracks. You just get normal bolts to put in the tracks. So very easy to fit out. And as you can see, I'm sitting on the swags right now. So I'm not intending on putting anything like that on this roof rack. Now, a roof rack for a Hilux or any dual cab is kind of useless unless you fit it out similar to what I've done with semi-permanent mounted things, because you can't put too much weight on your roof. I am right on the limit, maybe a kilo or 2 just over, or maybe a kilo or 2 just under. I'm very close to the threshold. Since the whole debacle, I've been paying close attention to what other roof rack manufacturers specify on their roofs. And even on this Patriot trailer, the X1N, it has a EXO rack. And that even specifies maximum load 100 kilos total dynamic. Okay, static load and dynamic load. Some roof rack brands use those terms. And what that term means is static. That's when the vehicle is not in motion. It's sitting still, it's static. Dynamic, that's when there's movement. Physics, movement, mass on top, mass and speed, mass and velocity. Those things need to be taken into account. Forget about the static part for now. Let's just focus on dynamic. The dynamic bit is the one that matters the most for you. Let's just say that that roof rack weighed 25 kilos and your roof load is 75 kilos. That means that when you put that particular rack on, you're left with 50 kilos of dynamic load. 50 kilos of dynamic load. If the rack says it can do 100, it can't do 100, it can only do 50 because it's governed by your roof load. That's something you need to understand. Now on the flip side of all this, for those guys who have a rooftop tent and they can have a dynamic load of 100, but now they're stressing about not being able to sleep in the tent, well, static is a different terminology. When you get to where you are going to camp, the car is no longer moving. So now you can hop up inside it and sleep in your tent. You don't have to worry about the dynamic anymore. Now it's down to static. And most vehicle roofs should be able to handle 2 people sleeping in the tent on top of the roof, if it's not moving. Keep that in mind. You cannot put a rooftop tent on your dual cab ute, most of them. There may be some exceptions. On the other hand, a 200 series or a Prado, those I can speak for because I have researched them. Those you can actually put a rooftop tent on it. And a close mate of mine, he's actually just used a backbone system to put the tent on top of, rather than having the rack adding weight to the vehicle. So there are some clever ways you can actually fit things to your roof. That was the Exo rack. The Frontrunner says, as I mentioned earlier, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, caution, do not exceed vehicle roof load rating. When loaded, drive in accordance with road conditions. On road or off road, in road conditions. If you overload your roof and you are bouncing over dunes like a maniac, something's gonna break. And not just the roof, your car. Something on your car is gonna break. Clear and easy to find. There's nowhere on the previous rack I had that had something like this or something like the Exo rack had written on it. It should be on there, like your vehicle with your GVM. It says on the inside of your door. It's important. So that's where I'm at with my roof rack. We're back where we started 5 weeks ago, right here. There are an absolute ton of questions through social media, and I just put up a post on IG and YouTube just asking for people's questions just so I could get them all into one spot. They've all been rushing in over the course of today. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to answer as many as I can. Now a lot of them are the same questions, so you know there'll probably be like 20 questions I'll answer. To see these questions and answers, you need to hop over to the link you can see on your screen right now to my second channel where the video will be, because I think a lot of other people have had enough of hearing about roof racks by now. But those who want to continue, it's over there. Your question may be answered. See you there. All right guys, take care. And don't overload your roof racks.